Welcome to the deep dive. So, today we're going to peel back the curtain a bit on how financial institutions actually try to spot crime. The stuff that might be hiding in communications or transaction details. We're diving into one specific tool they often use, a kind of tech approach that flags suspicious activity based on the text itself. And for this deep dive, we're drawing on excerpts from FinCrime Intelligence, which talks quite a bit about something called a lexicon-based model.
Yeah, and our mission today really is to get to grips with what that actually means. What is a lexicon-based model? How does it work, in the trenches fighting fin crime? Where is it used? What's good about it? What are the downsides? And importantly, how does it fit into the bigger picture of financial security tech? We're essentially looking at how systems analyze words and phrases to find potential risks.
Right. And you'll want to stick with us because we're aiming to share some specific examples from the material, the actual words these systems might be programmed to look for. So let's start there. What actually is a lexicon-based model? How does the source define it, basically?
Okay, so at its core, it's described as a computational method. It uses predefined lists of words or terms or even patterns. This list is the lexicon. And it uses this lexicon to scan through unstructured text data. Think of it like a very, very targeted keyword search, but automated.
Got it. So like a search engine, but one that's specifically built to find, I guess, risky language. So how does it actually do that? What are the mechanics involved?
Right. Well, the system scans huge amounts of text. Could be emails, trader chats, internal memos, even the little descriptions on payments. It then compares all that text against its specific lexicon, its list of known sort of high-risk terms or phrases. And when it finds a match, or maybe a specific combination of words it's looking for, it does something, maybe assigns a risk score, or more commonly, it triggers an alert for a human to look at. It's hunting for those specific linguistic red flags.
Okay. And the material stresses that this is based on rule-based logic. That sounds different from machine learning or AI that we hear so much about. What's the key difference there?
Yeah, that's a really crucial distinction. So machine learning, AI, they typically, learn from vast amounts of data. They find complex patterns, sometimes things they weren't explicitly told to look for.
Right, they adapt.
Exactly. Lexicon models, being rule-based, they don't really learn or adapt like that on their own. They just execute the rules they've been given. It's very much, if you see the specific word or this phrase, then do this action. Simple instructions, predefined. And the big plus side of that, which the source highlights, is transparency and predictability. You know exactly why an alert was triggered because that specific term from the list showed up.
I see. So it's easy to explain.
Very easy, which is, vital in regulated industries like finance. You need to be able to explain your systems. And it also means they don't necessarily need huge amounts of historical data to get going, unlike some ML models. So they can often be quicker to set up initially.
Okay, yeah, that clarity makes a lot of sense, especially for compliance. So where do firms actually use this rule-based lexicon approach? In the real world, fighting financial crime. What examples does the source give us?
Well, the material points to several key areas. One big one is surveilling internal communications. Think emails between traders or messages in internal chat systems. Here, the lexicons are built to look for specific phrases that might signal things like market abuse or insider dealing, terms like off the books or maybe cancel and correct or wash trade, stuff like that.
Okay, those sound pretty suspicious.
They do. Another major use is in enhancing transaction monitoring, so scanning the text fields and payment instructions or memos. The material mentions looking for words like charity or gift or perhaps donation, especially if those words pop up in transactions involving high-risk countries or individuals. It could be an attempt to disguise illicit funds.
Masking the real purpose.
Precisely. Then there's adverse media screening, using lexicons to scan news articles, public records, basically looking for mentions of a customer or potential customer alongside terms related to financial crime. Things like bribery, sanctions evasion, specific fraud types, trying to see if there's negative news linking them to those activities.
Got it.
And also in customer due diligence, or CDD. When onboarding a new customer, lexicons can scan the application forms or supporting documents. They might look for high-risk job titles or other indicators that someone might be a politically exposed person. These individuals, because of their public roles, can sometimes present higher risks for things like bribery or corruption.
Okay, so quite a range of applications.
Yeah, and the source also notes they can kind of supplement other systems like automated sanction screening. They can add a layer of context, perhaps flag something that needs a closer look, even if the main sanctions check was clear.
Okay, so with all the hype around AI and machine learning these days, why are these, I guess, simpler rule-based models still so important? What are the main benefits the material really emphasizes?
Well, the reasons they stick around, according to the insights we looked at, really come back to their basic nature.
Hmm.
First off, as we touched on, is that transparency and interpretability. It's just so critical.
Being able to explain why.
Exactly. In compliance, you often have to justify why an alert was raised or why you investigated something. With a lexicon model, it's straightforward. This alert fired because this exact phrase was found here. You don't always get that clarity from a complex black box AI.
Right.
Then there's the data side. They don't need those massive, often perfectly labeled historical data sets that many machine learning models require to train effectively. You can build a decent starting lexicon based on known risks, expert knowledge.
And get it running relatively quickly.
That's the next point, faster implementation. If a new regulation comes out or a new financial crime trend emerges, you can, in theory, create or update a lexicon pretty quickly to start monitoring for the relevant terms.
Okay.
And look, when they're well managed, when the rules and terms are carefully chosen and applied to a specific controlled area, they can actually be quite precise at finding exactly what they're designed to find.
Yeah.
The materials suggest they're particularly good for that kind of targeted, real-time alerting. They often serve as a good first line of defense, a foundational layer.
Okay, that builds a strong case, definitely, especially for compliance needs.
Mm.
But, and here's where it gets interesting, I think. No system's perfect. What about the downsides? What challenges does the material point out?
Oh, absolutely. There are significant limitations. Probably the biggest one is their lack of adaptability. They only find what's explicitly on the list, right?
Yeah.
Criminals are constantly changing their language. They use new slang, code words, indirect phrasing, unless someone is actively, manually updating that lexicon all the time.
The system won't catch the new stuff.
Exactly. It's inherently static until updated. And this, combined with the fact that some potentially risky words are also used in perfectly normal contexts, can lead to high false positive rates.
Ah, yes. The system flags things that aren't actually suspicious.
Precisely. Think back to that gift example in a payment memo. A simple lexicon might just flag every instance of gift,
Right.
but most of those are probably totally innocent, birthday money, whatever. But the system flags it anyway because gift could be used for dodgy purposes.
So analysts end up chasing down lots of noise.
Yeah, it creates a lot of review work, and tuning these models to reduce those false positives without accidentally filtering out real risks, well, it's a constant balancing act.
I can imagine. What else?
Well, another big one is they really struggle with nuance, sarcasm, irony, implicit meaning, subtle threats. Human language is incredibly complex. A lexicon model is just looking for keywords. It doesn't understand intent or context nearly as well as a human, or even more advanced natural language processing NLP techniques.
So someone could be discussing something illicit, but deliberately avoid the specific trigger words.
Absolutely, or use them sarcastically. The model wouldn't know the difference. Pure lexicon models aren't great at reading between the lines.
Okay.
And finally, they're very language dependent. A lexicon built for English is useless for Spanish or Mandarin or Arabic. You need completely separate, carefully crafted lexicons for every single language and sometimes even dialect you need to monitor.
Wow, that sounds like a lot of work to maintain.
It is. And, this is exactly why the material really stresses that these models are usually best used together with other more advanced techniques to help cover each other's weaknesses.
Right. So given those challenges, the static lists, the false alarms, the whole nuance problem, how do institutions actually try to make these lexicon models work better in practice? What kind of best practices does the source suggest?
Yeah, the insights give some pretty clear guidance there. First and foremost, customization is key. You can't just use a generic off-the-shelf list. The lexicons need to be tailored to the specific risks that are relevant to that institution, to its particular business areas, even its specific geographic footprint.
Makes sense. One size doesn't fit all.
Definitely not. And then, regular review and updating is absolutely critical. It's not a set it and forget it kind of tool. You have to constantly look at the alerts it's generating, understand the false positives, keep an eye out for new criminal terminology or typologies, and then feed that back into refining and updating the lists.
This is an ongoing process.
Constantly.
Yeah.
The material also mentions using more sophisticated rules. So instead of just single keywords, maybe rules that look at combinations of words or how close words are to each other, proximity rules, or rules that understand negation like ignoring a flag if the phrase is, "This is not a wash trade," adding that bit of context.
Okay, getting a bit smarter.
A bit smarter, yes. Integration is also important, making sure the alerts from the lexicon system flow smoothly into the bank's case management systems so analysts can easily pick them up and investigate efficiently.
Right. Streamlining the workflow.
Exactly. And, crucially, involving subject matter experts, SMEs, people who really understand the specific crime risks, or the market jargon, or the cultural nuances. Getting their input when building and tuning the lexicons is invaluable. Their real-world knowledge makes the lists much more effective. Oh, and the source also emphasizes rigorous testing and, of course, keeping good audit trails of changes for the regulators.
Okay, so wrapping this all up then, what's the big picture here? How do these lexicon models really fit into the fight against financial crime today, especially with those limitations we discussed? Are they, like, on their way out?
No, I don't think the material suggests they're becoming obsolete at all. Actually, quite the opposite in a way. The key takeaway is that they're most powerful, most effective when they're used as part of a broader, multi-layered approach, a hybrid
A
framework.
hybrid approach, meaning,
Meaning you combine these lexicon models with other technologies.
Yeah.
You pair them with, say, machine learning models that are better at spotting new, unknown patterns. You use them alongside graph analytics, perhaps, to map out hidden connections between accounts or individuals. And absolutely critically, you combine them with skilled human analysts.
right, the human element is still key.
Indispensable. So in this kind of hybrid system, the lexicon model plays a really specific, valuable role. It provides that scalable, transparent, explainable layer. It's good for rapidly identifying known risks based on explicit language cues. It offers that crucial explainability that some other more complex models might lack. So it's not the whole answer, but it's seen as a really important foundational piece of the puzzle, working alongside other tools and human expertise to build a more robust defense.
Okay, so we've taken quite a deep dive there into lexicon-based models. We've understood them as these sort of rule-based engines looking for specific words and phrases in text data to flag potential financial crime. We've seen their strengths, especially that transparency and speed for certain tasks, which is obviously vital for compliance. But we've also really dug into the limitations, how they struggle to adapt, the problems with nuance, those pesky false positives, and the material really positions them not as a standalone solution, but as one important, explainable gear in a much larger machine, that hybrid system involving more advanced tech and, crucially, human insight.
Exactly. That balance is really the key message. They handle the known explicit risks well, providing that essential baseline detection, while other approaches and human analysts tackle the more complex, hidden, and evolving threats.
Which kind of leaves us, and you, the listener, with this final thought to chew on. Given how quickly criminals adapt their language, how creative they get to avoid detection, and knowing that these lexicon models fundamentally rely on predefined lists, lists that struggle with subtlety and new terms, how much of the really clever, disguised financial crime might still be slipping through the cracks? Even within these sophisticated hybrid systems, if the bad guys simply learn not to use the words on the list, what gets missed?